in Kazakhstan. The first 7, 8 days was riding solo across the Mangostar region, which is just all desert. And that was a really good time for me because it was very close to my 9th birthday. So I was able to sort of really sort of think about where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go mentally in life. And that was really
Mm.
good. But it also gets very, very hard. I mean, it's minus 10 degrees as well. So it's like, it's just not a nice, enjoyable experience, and it's not safe.
Wow.
I
Okay.
think about quitting most days. But I
Yeah.
keep doing it. I created an agreement with myself that I was going to do it and I was going to complete it, and here I am. So I'm still doing it, but it definitely is a lot easier
Mm.
riding with other people. That's for sure. And I can only listen to so many podcasts during the day before I'm like, right, fuck this. I don't want to do it anymore. Um, so there is that aspect of needing constant stimulation. And that's why I think when I went into this trip originally, I thought it was going to be the hardest part was going to be the physical aspect, keeping those pedals turning. But actually, the hardest part has been the mental resilience aspect.
What drives someone to leave everything behind? Their job, their comfort zone, their country, and set off alone to cycle around the world. Welcome to another episode of Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey for a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes, and you can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. And in this podcast, I explore cycling's global trends, community needs, innovative business strategies, and the journeys of remarkable individuals in the world of cycling. In today's episode of Ride to Success, I sit down with Ben Clark, who left the tech world behind to take on a 35,000 kilometer ride across continents, cultures, and some of the toughest mental challenges you can imagine. From the deserts of Kazakhstan to the chaos of India, and from mental health struggles to moments of pure wonder, Ben's story is raw, honest, and incredibly human. If you ever felt stuck, burned out, or ready to take a leap into the unknown, this conversation will hit home. So let's dive in. Welcome, Ben, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Brilliant. I mean, as you are traveling across the globe, I want just to straight ask you, where are you based on now? Where are you? What country, what city are you in at the moment?
Right now, I'm in Bangkok, capital of Thailand. So I've been here now for, well, about 10 days now, and I've just completed my Southeast Asia loop, where I
Right.
flew
Yes.
into Bangkok originally, did the Southeast Asia loop, and now I'm back in Bangkok. Beautiful place.
Okay. So you mentioned you have been so far 10 days in Bangkok. What have you been up to during these 10 days in Bangkok?
Mainly admin. For my sins, I bought a MacBook a month ago, so I've been doing some work that I haven't really been doing for the past 16 months while I've been on the trip. So I've mainly
Mm.
been doing that and sort of planning what I'm going to do next in terms of the cycle tour as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few logistical challenges that I want to explore in a conversation because it's, bikepacking across the globe. There's a fair few of those
There is.
to struggle with. But before we get into those, into the weeds, really of the your challenge adventure, if you will, I want to start by the start really. What inspired you to take on this expedition? Because what was
Sure.
the reason, the why? Is that
The
what I'm trying
why.
to get at?
Yeah, definitely. The earliest memory I can have of something like this, something of this
Mm.
undertaking was sort of, I think it was about maybe 2004, so I would have been 9 years old. And I remember
Okay.
watching with my dad the Long Way Round television TV show on TV when it first came out. And that was Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, and they motorcycled around the world from John O'Groats in
Mm.
Scotland all the way to New York, going east. And I just remember watching that and being so
Right.
inspired by travel, motorcycle travel specifically, but
Yeah.
more widely, just really easy, sort of simple travel on two wheels, camping,
Mhm.
all that sort of thing. And yeah, it just always inspired me. And I think it would have been October 2023 when I quit my job, and I just said, "Fuck it, let's do it." let's cycle around the world. But I was originally gonna, and it's weird how things turn out. So I basically bought the motorcycle that they'd used a long way around, and it's now sat on my parents'
Oh, really?
driveway,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's
When
there.
did you buy it? Like, what was it?
I bought it in April 2021. So I've had it a few years.
Okay, so there was
Big,
the plan was brewing from it's not like you just in 2023
I've
after
wanted to do
thinking
it
about it
forever.
like
I've always wanted to do it. Ever since I
right,
saw a
okay,
long way around, I've wanted to do it every year, but I've never had the money because it's quite expensive to buy a bike like that, and then to do a trip like that as well. It's quite expensive. But anyway, I bought the bike and I bought everything to do it on the motorcycle. And then
okay,
when I quit
right.
my job, I was like, it would be great to do it on the motorcycle, but it would also be awesome to do it on a bicycle. And I don't know. I think I just it's weird how these things turn out, but I for some reason I just went with the bicycle. I'm kind of glad I did. I mean, it's always we can get onto that later, but I mean, bicycle wise, it's been good so far. But yeah, the motorcycle is on my parents' driveway at home right now, ready and waiting to be ridden, minus a bit of servicing,
Yeah, sure.
because I don't know if I don't know if I've told you already, Pedro, but I'm doing this trip, and then when I get back to the UK, work for a couple of years, I then intend to sort of ride around the world again on the motorcycle. So I want to do two
Right.
laps around the world.
So you,
That's the
so
dream.
2 laps around the globe, and then you
Yep,
started. Okay, right. So you have the motorbike ready in waiting, but the
yep.
bike the first leg of the
Well,
circumnavigation.
yeah. Well, so my brand is called World by Bike.
Yeah.
So you've seen my logo, obviously, and so this is World by Bike one, and then World by Bike two will be on the motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. So, would you say kind of that, watching that TV, well, series, I guess, was it the starting point? Would you say
That was the
your
starting point.
adventure? No, well, your
That
starting
was the
point in
starting point.
terms of like, getting that light bulb moment. It's like, oh, this is interesting. This could be something. Not maybe not there, but was it something that got you imagining what the possibilities could look like in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And then there was also another pinpointed, inspiring moment. And I can't remember the guy's name. I think don't quote me on this, but I think it's Josh Reed on Instagram. And
Mm,
the video is called A Bike, Bivvy, and a Drone. And it's this guy, I think his name's Josh. Please be so. But he basically rides from China, from the giant factory, all the way back to the UK with his bicycle, a bivvy and a drone. It's just the
yeah.
documentary that he films along the way is just so beautifully shot and great music and commentary. It's a very beautiful,
Mm,
um, inspirational piece, and that sort of I watched that in my adult life, and whereas the long way around was more my child life, and but I watch them all the time either way anyway. But I mean, there was more in my sort of when I'm behind my desk at work and I'm watching that on YouTube. That's like, oh yeah, I should do that. I should get around to doing that. And I think
mm,
there was also this sort of lingering thought in my mind as well about the inspiration for the journey was the fact that I got to the age of 28, which was how old I was back then, just before I was planning the trip. And I thought, well, it's kind of my responsibility to see the world. I know so many people who, haven't left their
mm,
towns or countries just because they were
yeah.
never sort of given that sort of inspiration to go traveling. And I didn't. I mean, I'm very well traveled, so I'm not like that. But it's in the sense of I felt like I had to go and see the world. I had to go and see Nepal and India, Southeast
Mm,
Asia, and understands as well. And I thought that was almost like a moral obligation that I should do if I can do it, then why not?
yeah,
Um,
interesting that you
to
say
see
the
how the
moral obligation. Um,
other half lives, really.
mm.
To get
Oh,
a
we'll
reference
get
point.
into that because it's definitely. I mean, in the kind of the world we live in is that where everything is at the touch of a finger. You can get to know what it feels like or what it looks like to live in Thailand, but not live there actually. But in a digital world, it's very easy to kind of immerse yourself in experiences, but without actually being the place.
Yeah.
So I'm interested because what have you learned so far? Because it's I'm sure you have seen a lot of, you have seen a lot of countries so far. Um, you have connected with a lot of people along the way. I'm sure you made friendships along the way as well.
Mhm.
And what does it mean at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I mean, I've sort of thought about this. I mean, I've had a lot of time to think about it on the open road. But I think what sort of really opened my mind whilst being on the bike and going to all these places. I mean, I've been to some really desolate places across Kazakhstan and
Yeah,
Uzbekistan, and also to a lesser extent, Laos and Cambodia and these sorts of places.
yeah,
And I've had a really nice, positive experience in all of these places. It's completely different to what you're
mm,
sort of taught or made to think about in the news. It's completely
right,
different. Like everybody in every country just wants the best for you. They're all incredibly nice, um, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And it's interesting how many more people could potentially go traveling if that sort of media lingering of a bad taste about different countries wasn't there. And I've sort of realized as well that apart from the language barrier, for
mm,
most of these countries, I probably have more in common with most people than I don't. Um, same interests, similar sorts of thoughts and stuff, different level, but I have a lot more things in common with someone from Cambodia than I have not in common with them, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
of course, yeah, it makes sense.
We might have the same interest. We
Mm,
might both be into cycling, all that sort of stuff. So that
mm,
that sort of barrier, when you take away the language barrier, it's quite interesting that there's so much sort of social norm.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned is that kind of the bicycle, that this trip has kind of allowed you to see and to break down these kind of perceived barriers or perceived cultural understanding of what other cultures and countries mean or represent before you took on this challenge. And I mean, you are someone that has worked kind of in predominantly in the tech industry, and there's kind of, from what I know, from what my research, kind of you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and you
Mhm.
say, it's easier. Kind of, I don't know if it is easier, but you do have to have quite a bold ambition to take on a challenge like this, because it's you are committing 1 to 2 years, in your case 2 years, to do this trip. So that's a massive commitment.
Yep.
So I mean, how do you prepare to this? How do you kind of use different techniques to get on the road and just pedal?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big sort of block out of my career. You're right, and I think it's really good to have the time to
Mm.
sort of think about other things away from business. But sorry, what was your question in terms of the? Would you mind just repeating that?
Yeah, 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 sure. I mean, I'm just trying to understand, like, to take on a challenge like this, you require quite a bold attitude
Yeah.
and commitment, you know. And how has that experience of work allowed you
Okay.
to,
Yes, I
or led
understand.
you to commit to the world by bike?
Yep. Yep. Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of risk taking, both in
Mm.
business and the tech industry, and tech industry is obviously all risk because a lot of the technology that's coming out hasn't is it's being tried and tested. So there is a lot of negotiation involved in both cycle touring and the taking of risks. Um, I'd say coming from an entrepreneurial background as well, which a lot of my background is, it is almost a case of trying your luck in a lot of cases. And I think it's probably closer to uh, traveling is probably closer to a business than most things because you realize when you're traveling on a bicycle and on a motorcycle or overlanding that there's a lot of bureaucratic loopholes that you have to jump through. And you just have to sort of, you know, keep trying,
Yeah,
almost constantly testing it, exploratory testing, just to see what you can get through, what you can get by, and sort of finding out the research from different people, whether that's a bus driver on the road or whoever it is, or ChatGPT. I love that. Or people in WhatsApp groups to get to obviously find the information to then go and apply it. So I think there's a lot of transferable skills between business and the startup world, and especially tech and cycle touring. It's certainly not hindered me coming from this industry into cycle touring, but I don't think it's a prerequisite.
of course, of course, and that also there is a I think a motivation behind, which is your the journey supports Andy's Man's club,
Yep.
to promote open conversations, like for men, among men, among about mental health. And what is the meaning behind it? Why are you supporting this charity? What is for you specifically? What is the reason behind wanting to support this and raise money for this charity?
So, well, I've had my own mental health battles in the past.
Right.
Been in places where I wasn't particularly happy with myself, and couldn't find a way out or a way to deal with those. And I think, especially as a man in the UK, and well, especially as a man, and especially in the UK, it's it can be difficult to find help, and the help doesn't really exist. There's no resources, and also as a man, it's quite difficult to open up about your feelings. And I know that I would have been in, I wouldn't have done some of the things that I did um, back then if Andy's Man Club or something similar existed for me.
Yeah.
And basically the way Andy's Man Club works, I'm sure you've looked into it, but it's a mental health support group. It's a physical mental support group, kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but it kind of looks like an AA meeting. So you go to a community center and you sit around in a circle and you talk about your issues, and
So
you're
like
comforted
open
by other
space
people.
to share ideas and
Exactly.
share struggles. Yeah.
And anyone from the age of 18 to whatever can go and talk about their feelings and get support. And I think it's a really great charity as well, because a lot of charities, you don't really see where the money goes. With this one of the reasons I chose Andy's Man Club as opposed to any particular mental health charity was because the money quite clearly goes into their, you know, into their fundraising account, and then it goes into setting up new uh, meetings in different cities and towns across the UK. So you can clearly see it's very transparent. So that's why I chose it from a sort of charity point of view. But yeah, I mean, if I had had something like Andy's Man Club when I was younger, I know that it would have stopped me from doing things that I would later regret. And I think it's a great resource, and
Mhm.
it deserves to be triumphed. So that's why I chose it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad.
I mean, now I'm kind of interested in finding out. Are you, was in any way the this challenge kind of as was a result of the experiences, your kind of your struggles that you mentioned or alluded briefly about mental health that led you to this point?
Well, my struggles were related to how I was feeling about myself,
Right.
my fitness, my body, my health, as well as interpersonal relationships. Dialectical behavioral therapy is
Hmm.
something that I've had therapy
Okay.
for. So there's lots of things about how but about me personally, but there's, the depression doesn't have to take that sort of prerequisite thing. I mean, it can be many different things. But I like Andy's Man Club because regardless of what it is you're struggling from, whether that's anxiety as well or anything like that, you can still go and you can talk about that, and it's a real safe space for men, sort of away from you know having to go to therapy or having to go to
Yeah.
a general uh, uh, um, sort of a general charity that might not understand men's needs. Um, but yes, I think also, I mean, to come back to your question, the cycling aspect as well. And there's obviously lots of exercise related charities, um,
Hmm.
fitness definitely opens up. I think fitness can be a very good alleviator for a lot of mental health issues. Um, and I've found actually that um, me getting on the bike and being healthier, certainly being healthier generally, and we can talk about, like one for me, a key performance indicator is my general fitness, looking at my HRV and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I know that if I can get myself to a certain point, then I'm not going to feel depressed about my body. And it still happens. I can still look in the mirror and feel like fat, but
Hmm.
it happens less and less. And I think it's also environmental based as well about where you are. I know I'm slightly more depressed in places like Kazakhstan where the weather was disgustingly cold and really horrible
Hmm.
bad weather. But I mean, in terms of the weather makes a big difference. That's for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
your
for
environment,
sure he does.
yeah,
I mean,
and
I can totally relate to that. I'm being Portuguese and living in UK for now over 15 years. Whenever the weather is sunny and warm, I bright up. My mood all of a sudden, is sparkly. And when the weather is like gloomy, overcast, cold, I can feel that I'm less sparkly. So for me, I can totally relate with that because it has a direct impact, um, and that probably is because of it's kind of coming from a Mediterranean culture where the weather is warmer and
yeah,
sunnier.
it's vitamin
I
C
wa-
and it's melatonin and all that sort of stuff as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to. I want to touch on something because I think it's important. Because you on this trip, um, there's a lot of solitude. Cycling in general involves riding, you know, not not all of it by yourself, but as you're doing this unsupported, alone, I know.
Yep, it's hard.
How do you? It is. I'm sure it is. I never done it. I'm lying. I did once, kind of a backpacking trip, but it was more like a credit card trip. So
Credit
from
card touring.
from north of
That's a great.
Portugal.
You shouldn't knock that. That's a great life. Don't have to carry any weight.
Well, I did have to carry kind of clothes and minimal stuff, but it was from
Yep.
north of Portugal to south of Portugal, so it's like very, very kind of only 6 days trip. Nothing to shout about when compared to yours. Um, but I wanted to kind of, how do you balance, solitude, being on your bike, just pedaling one leg at a time, you know, and balancing that with, you mentioned your own mental health struggles, and also the fact that, the human connection, like you have, through seeing your stories on Instagram, you have connected with other bikepackers, other people, local people across many countries. And
Mhm.
how do you balance that? How do you balance time by yourself, the human, and then human connection? Is this something that you're trying to kind of rationally trying to combine, or is this something that is you wanted to seek out solitude? What how does it work?
I'm a very difficult person when it comes to that. I do like to be alone most of the time. Solitude is good um, for me, but also it can get a bit lonely sometimes. Um,
Hmm.
I think there's been really good opportunities for me to have being by myself, like in Kazakhstan. The first sort of like 7, 8 days was riding solo across the Mangostar region, which is just all desert. And that was a really good time for me because it was very close to my 29th birthday. So I was able to sort of really sort of think about where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go mentally in life. And that was really
Hmm.
good. But it also gets very, very hard. I mean, it's minus 10 degrees as well. So it's like, it's just not a nice, enjoyable experience and it's not safe. So I did have the opportunity to ride with other people, and that is a lot more fun. But then also when you're riding with other people, it then brings into account different challenges. Like you have to, you almost become one person in terms of your decision making because you have to take into account decision making of both people, and it does take you out of your comfort zone, which is a good thing. But it also takes you out of your comfort zone in the sense of I don't want to do that, but you do it anyway because you're a team now,
Yeah.
and that's been difficult in the past. But I wouldn't change it. I've had some really good experiences and definitely gone out of my comfort zone in
Mhm.
order to ride with other people. And in fact, I'd very much like to ride with more people. I think that's the only realistic way that you can do long distance cycle touring like this without losing your mind.
Yeah.
I've already lost my mind several times on this trip.
Wow.
I
Okay.
think about quitting most days, but I
Yeah.
keep doing it. I created an agreement with myself that I was going to do it and I was going to complete it, and here I am. So I'm still doing it, but it definitely is a lot easier
Mm.
riding with other people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of
So
your question specifically, if I might just
yeah.
add as
Yeah.
well, I
Go for
think
it.
for me, I did therapy for a while, and
Mhm.
I was diagnosed with ADHD, a
Okay.
light form of ADHD, but I think it's sort of crept up to being more significant in later
Mhm.
years. And I just realized I need constant stimulation all the time. And if I'm not
Mm.
stimulated, I'm extremely bored. And, I can only listen to so many podcasts during the day before I'm like, right, fuck this. I don't want to do it anymore. Um, so there is that aspect of needing constant stimulation. And that sort of really comes from being with the
Mm.
people as well, or listening to the Joe
Yeah.
Rogan podcast on repeat all day. Because otherwise you're just staring at the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen, but something that was really inspiring to me. I mean, there's lots of cyclists that have been inspiring to me, um, many who are still on the road right now. But Mark
Mhm.
Beaumont
Yeah.
has been a good inspiration for me, but just
Mhm.
because his mental resilience for having done that all day, every day, some days 320 kilometers and upwards every single day,
Yeah.
is
You're talking about
insane.
the 80 day days around the world kind of
Yeah,
challenge.
the man who cycled the world. Yeah, Mark Beaumont rode around the world in
Yeah.
80 days. And also Leo Wilcox as well, female cyclist,
Mm. Yes.
um, in a similar sort of time, I think. Not sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, just the mental resilience required for riding handlebars down, it is hard. It's extremely, extremely hard.
But then it's yeah, I mean they it's I would say that it's different. It's a different I mean, you always choose your art. You always choose how hard you want to push yourself. And for those people, they set their minds on a record. They set their minds on
Yeah.
beating a world record. But that's not where you are operating. It is more of, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but from what I understand, from what you're sharing with us today, is that you're more on a personal journey.
Mine's a leisurely ride. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's a leisurely
I mean,
ride, but I mean, I can still sympathise with them in the sense of head down, bum up. It is, well, maybe not like that, but head down at least, looking at the road, doing 80 kilometres versus Mark's 380 kilometres in a day. It's still insanely boring sometimes when you're just like head down on the tarmac, especially when there's no sort of English conversations around you. There's no other people that you're cycling with. Uh,
mhm,
it's much the same day in, day out. It is extremely hard. And that's the things that I've sort of struggled with in the past, on this trip especially.
yeah,
And that's why I think when I went into this trip originally, I thought it was going to be the hardest part was going to be the physical aspect, keeping those
mm,
pedals turning. But actually, the hardest part has been the mental resilience
yeah.
aspect um, of
That's something
turning
that.
up.
Sorry, I was sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Like just but
No worries.
that's one of the things that kind of you know elite athletes struggle with because it's the mental focus is like the visualization that is required of top
Yeah.
performing athletes to be in the headspace, see themselves achieving the goal that they have set and they've been working for years. And I mean, and that applies to everyday life. And that applies to the challenge that you're set yourself on. Because it's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is that the mind will give up quicker rather than the body if you don't work the kind of the muscles, the connections, the wiring in the brain to get you through. And this is something I wanted to kind of touch base with, and we've been already approaching this because it requires a lot of mental fortitude, a lot of mental strength to commit to this challenge, and then to, you mentioned that you made an agreement with yourself to complete it.
Yep.
And I and I kind of wanted to dive into this because it seems and sounds so far removed from what, someone sitting at the desk at their work listening to this, perhaps on a 9 to 5 job, and they can dream about this. Oh, this could be great, but then they can also say, wow, this is mental. This guy is off, it's off somewhere else. I don't think I could even imagine doing this.
Yep.
So, what mental tools or habits have you used and kind of adopted to help you keep pushing the pedals?
Yeah, I think it is that sort of agreement with myself that I was going to do it, and I now have to do it. So that is one start. That is not motivation necessarily. That's discipline. That's making sure that you show up every day and you do what's required to see you through at the end, and sort of having at least turning up. And I've said to myself sometimes as well, if I feel shit in the morning, just do 40 kilometers. Just do 40K. Just get out and do it, even if it means I'm in a hotel in another 2 hours. Just do it anyway. And it's interesting because it means nothing on that particular day that you've only done 40 kilometers or whatever. I mean, this is when I'm absolutely knackered, by the way. This is like after 3 or 4 back-to-back rides. But as long as I get up and do 40 kilometers, in the long run, doing a little bit every day, it's all about continual improvement. And I think that sort of ideology of continual improvement has been really sort of visualized for me during this trip, because if you think about, if I say to someone I'm going to cycle around the world, they're like, what the fuck? That's crazy. But if you just say, well, I'm going to do 50 kilometers every single day, then it adds up to something massive. And that being able to visualize that sort of continued improvement has been a really valuable thing for me that I've learned from this trip.
Yeah, definitely. I can resonate with that because it's like breaking down those massive goals into achievable chunks. It makes a huge difference. If you say to someone, I'm going to ride from A to B, and every day I'm going to be doing 40K, and I'll see where that gets me at the end of a year. If you think about, well, maybe that's not too difficult, actually. You just have to work out the logistics. But if you say, I'm going to ride 20,000 kilometers in 1 year, or wherever it is, 30,000 K in a year, that'll be like, whoa. I don't know if that's manageable. I mean, so we've been talking about kind of, the reasons, the whys, the logistics kind of breaking it down. But can you just share a little bit, the start and how is it going so far? For the people that don't know anything about you, like how has it been so far, the trip, in terms of what countries have you visited, and what has been the kind of the highlights and obviously the low points as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I set off January 2024. Yeah, January 2024. So I've been on the road for about 15 months now. Cycling from North Wales in the UK, and my intended destination is Boston in the US. I'm about 20,000 kilometers in now, which includes distances like flying to various places as well. So, but it's about 35,000 kilometers. And so I did set an initial plan to do 35,000 kilometers cycling, but I don't think that's necessarily doable. And also I've learned throughout the trip as well that it's not just about saying I've done it now, it's about it being an enjoyable experience as well. And if it's not enjoyable, then why am I doing it? So I'm just sort of going with the flow now. The only thing is my press release, when I initially did the marketing for this trip, does say 35,000 kilometers. So I'm kind of sort of held to that contract. So I might have to write to Endurance Sports Wire and get them to correct that to say something else.
Or maybe just do a few laps of Boston before you finish.
Exactly. So I've basically my route was from Wales down to sort of Southampton, and then got ferried over to Spain, did the Basque Country, which was amazing. Went through
Mm.
France, mainly along the coast of Côte d'Azur, um, the Blue Coast, and then through Italy, Croatia, over to Istanbul, across Turkey, which was brutal in the sun. Georgia, probably my favorite country on the trip so far, was
Nice.
amazing. Great food, beautiful, beautiful place. And then I did the Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan with a guy called Jamie Hargreaves, who I met on Instagram, and his friend at the time, Malachi Francis. So we rode Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan together, got to Tashkent, and then me and Malachi flew to New Delhi, while Jamie did the rest of Afghanistan by himself. I don't know why I didn't do Afghanistan, in hindsight, because I really,
Mm.
looking back on it, I really wish I had done. And that's probably
Okay.
the biggest regret of the trip so far, was not doing
Mm.
Afghanistan. Pakistan's slightly different because, I mean, that's the route you have to go through. So if you're going to do cycle around the world, you either go around the Pamir Highway through the stands, or you go through China, or you go through Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I didn't want to go through Pakistan because of some of the stories I'd heard, which are rational and logical. But I wish I had done
Mhm.
Afghanistan, so that's a shame. But anyway, I can do it in the future on a motorcycle, so it's not the end of the world. But yeah, and then so me and Malachi flew into New Delhi. We met
Mhm.
up with two other British cyclists, Elliot and Sam Bikepacking the World. So we rode, we did the Taj Mahal to what do we do? India to New Delhi to Agra, and then Agra to Jaipur, and then back to New Delhi. And then I rode to Nepal, Kathmandu, and then flew to Bangkok. Just did the Southeast Asia loop now through
Mhm.
Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and back to Bangkok, which has been really good. Very hard. I'll come on to this as well later, but I'll say it to now. Say it now. I've sort of Southeast Asia is a very difficult place to cycle, I think, for me,
Okay.
because it's kind of like it's like a backpacking environment, and it's also a cycling environment, and I'm sort of trying to do both, trying to have the backpacking life of drinking every night and also cycling. And in this heat, it's just not doable. So I'm now a
Mm.
month and a half alcohol free and nicotine free, so completely back to being healthy, high HRV, which is heart rate variability for those that don't know.
Yeah.
But generally, that means I'm fitter than I used to be. But I've now sort of like, I know it sounds stupid to say, I know that, but I'm now fully committed to the cycling as opposed to half partying, half backpacker vibes, and that's made a huge impact as well. Obviously, it's slightly different to Mark Beaumont, who wasn't doing any of that, but um,
Mhm.
I've sort of moved it away from being a holiday and sort of getting back into the full cycling vibe, which is required for a trip like this.
Yeah.
And then next, I'm going to do. I've just booked a flight for my sins. I don't fancy. I don't know if you know Pedro, but it's monsoon season here in Thailand.
No, I didn't know that,
So
but well, that's
it
that's.
is.
Can you even ride on that? Like, can you even ride on that type of weather?
It's like a swimming pool. It's crazy. I mean, it is literally like some of the wettest environments you've ever seen. And then you got the humidity in the air. It's about 35 to 40 degrees every single day. So it's very, very moggy. I think it's the best word to describe it. Moggy. It's a horrible, horrible thing to be riding in. I just can't do it anymore. So I've decided I'm going to skip the rest of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and
Mhm.
just fly direct from Bangkok to Brisbane, Australia, which I feel a bit bad about it, but I could do it again in the future. But it comes back to this idea about what do I want out of this trip? Is it just to say that I've done it, or is it to
Mhm.
have an enjoyable experience? And if I'm not enjoying it, what's the point? So I'd rather be
Yeah.
happy and ride the bits that I want to ride.
So, I
And that's
mean,
about it, really. Sorry, so that's quite a long answer, isn't it?
no, 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 that's
And
brilliant
and of
because
course do
it
the
gives
US as well.
yeah, of course. No, 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 it's brilliant because it gives a perfect overview of what you've done and what you are about to do. And I mean, there's obviously I'm like thinking of questions in my mind because I'm curious, naturally curious, and I wanted to Well, first start on the fact you know you mentioned Georgia as the best country. You kind of your biggest regret not cycling through Afghanistan.
Mhm.
So, kind of talk us first about Georgia. What is Georgia meant to you? Cycling through Georgia.
Georgia's very interesting. It's a country which is technically in Europe, I believe. I
Mm,
think technically it is. It's part of the Caucasus. I should have done my research prior to this interview on how to pronounce it, but
hmm
Caucasus region. So it's part of Europe technically, and it does feel very European. It's very green. It's very similar looking people.
hmm
Um, so it's a very beautiful place. I mean, the mountains are incredible. It's very cold in the evening and nighttime sometimes, but it's a very beautiful place, and the architecture is very similar to Europe as well. Um,
Okay.
I enjoyed it, especially the food is incredible. The people are very nice, um, and I just think it's a little bit of a hidden gem, really. I
Mm,
know they've been denied their EU um, involvement. That's been vetoed their ability and membership to join the EU, so they're a little bit unhappy about that at the moment. But apart from that, politically, I think they're doing probably not okay. But I mean, it's a very nice country anyway. Yeah, but the food is incredible, and I think it's a hidden gem. It's kind of like how it feels like if you ever went to the Basque Country, San Sebastian,
yeah, I've been. Yeah, I've been.
yeah, hidden gem, and then
Mhm.
all the tourists come. Well, that kind of feels like what San Sebastian felt like 10 years ago.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, it's I never been to Georgia, so I guess here is the suggestion to go.
I
Is
would
it?
say so. Yeah.
How, it borders with Russia. I mean, whilst you were there, what does the culture look like in terms? Is it very anti-Russian? Is it because I'm just curious to see what is your take from riding through Georgia, because obviously there are obviously been quite a few disputes and conflicts in the past with Russia. I'm just wondering if that's something that you pick up whilst riding through the country.
Yeah. I'm glad that you asked me that question because I was trying to be non-political in the last question. That's why I mentioned food three times. Um, so politically in Georgia, they've been denied their European membership. They were told
Mhm.
that they could get it in 2028, I believe, or 2027, and now that's been basically ripped up from under them. So they're not going to be joining. And the general sort of atmosphere in Georgia amongst pretty much everyone, mainly young people, is just absolute anger and disdain towards the current government. Um,
Wow.
I mean, in Georgia, you will see membership posters everywhere for their application to join the EU. Everywhere you see like the European stars, and then I don't know if they're still there, probably, but you could really see a sort of national pride of the country wanting to join the EU, because
Mhm.
obviously they get access to the Schengen area, which is the ability to travel, live, laugh, love, and work all around Europe, which the UK used to have, as you'll know. Um, an
Yeah.
incredible thing to have lost, but it happens. Moving on. But in terms of your question about Russia, yeah, I mean, there Georgia's in a very difficult situation because obviously it's right on the edge of the sea. Um, it's known as the corridor. It's right next to Turkey, and it's right next to Russia. And Russia's obviously tried to annex
Yeah.
Georgia many times in the past. So there's that sort of fear that Georgia could be taken or invaded again in the future. Um, it's a very weird. It's a very strategically good located place. I didn't know this, but I didn't. Well, I did know this, or did I? No, I found out about it recently. That's what I meant to say. But Britain used to own Batumi in World War One, which is the port
Is that
city
it?
on the coast.
Okay. Right.
And it's a very interesting city if you get the chance to go. It's kind of like a mini Las Vegas style, lots of fiberglass hotels and stuff. It's the only city around where you can legally gamble. So you get all the people coming from Turkey, because obviously you can't gamble in Islam. So they come over the border to Batumi, spend all their money, gamble away. And then people from Russia do the same. They come to Batumi to gamble. So you get a big melting pot of Turkish food, Russian food. There's a lot of Ukrainian people there. Some of the best Ukrainian restaurants I've ever had in my life were in Batumi. Incredible food. So it's an amazing place, and it's sort of similarly echoes in Tbilisi as well. But very
Hmm.
nice people. I'm pretty sure this is true. I'm sure I did research for it again just to make sure the other day. But in the Soviet Union, which Georgia was part of,
Yeah.
um, if you smiled, um, it could be seen as someone who is potentially mentally ill. So if you smiled, you
Wow.
could be seen as someone who is, I don't know, a dissident or weird or crazy or mentally ill. And certainly in Georgia, I mean, you could just simply type into Google Georgia and smiling, and it is very well known that Georgian people do not smile, and that was very noticeable cycling through. Because it looks like everyone's miserable, but actually when you talk to them, they're really nice and friendly and happy. But because you don't see them smiling,
Interesting.
it's kind of weird. It's very noticeable. I'm 100% sure that's true. I did the
Okay,
research,
well,
so
I'll Google it afterwards.
hopefully
That's
you do.
a
Yeah,
weird. That's a fun fact
correct
to
me in the show
find out.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah. So clearly there's a kind of political, well, kind of tension in Georgia, and I'm guessing that's kind of something similar. Why didn't you cycle through Afghanistan? Was it because the kind of you mentioned earlier on your show was the media kind of narrative about Afghanistan that kind of put you off, or what was the reason that you chose not to?
I think it's still harrowing images of the
Mm.
planes being leaving the tarmac in Afghanistan when the US backed out, and sort
Oh,
of
right.
understanding that the British embassy staff in Afghanistan were at the threat of being executed if they didn't leave the country, and then to think, well, if I'm going to go and cycle through on my bike, is that allowed? I don't know. So it's
Mm.
kind of like it's you're very unsure. You don't know if you can trust the media. Well, you can't anyway, generally. But I mean, in that sort of sense where it's life and death, is this a sensationalist headline or is this the reality? And everybody I've met who has traveled to Afghanistan has said actually how chill the Taliban are. It's crazy actually because they'll take pictures put it on Instagram of them at a Taliban party, a social gathering, holding guns, and just saying how chill and nice the Taliban are. It's absolutely nuts. I would never have thought it. But that's been the case for every single person that's been through Afghanistan. I've not heard of any. I've
Okay.
certainly heard of many stories of people going through Iran and having difficulties with border staff and police and
Hmm.
various intelligence agencies, but not heard any problems related to Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, it's a beautiful place anyway. Um,
Yeah.
They've
Mm.
got very nice buildings. They've got water parks as well, and they are really sort of. It's the most sort of weird place, kind of like North Korea, because in one side they've got you know bans on women going to education, going to school, and then the other side they've got water parks and almost like a sort of thriving tourism industry under the Taliban. It's very very strange,
That's,
but
that's, that's weird. Yeah.
very weird. Ultimately, it's safe to go through. So I kind of wish I had gone through it, and it's sort of.
Hmm.
I don't want to say it diminishes my trip, but it sort of makes me a little bit disappointed that I didn't cycle the whole world because apart from Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is the ability, and also Myanmar as well, where the borders are actually closed. Apart from
Hmm.
those, you can actually cycle all the way across land, apart from obviously the bits where you have to go over a ferry. So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit potentially disappointed that I didn't do the whole sort of road distance, but shit happens, and I'd
Well, I
rather have
mean,
my
it.
freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course. Yeah. It's. I guess you have to you make the choices. You have to live with the choices you made.
yeah.
That's the end of it. That's no kind of move on and try to kind of learn from those choices.
But the Pakistan
Mm.
aspect, I mean, the Pakistan aspect is slightly different to Afghanistan in the sense that if you ride through, you will have police convoys almost every 30 kilometers. And the way, obviously, Pakistan's split is there's sort of districts and counties, and then within those counties, there's police checkpoints every 30 kilometers. So you're held by the police for 30 kilometers, and then they drop you off at the next police station, and then they drop you off at the next police station. You have to stay in government approved expensive hotels every single night. So you're just being child minded basically throughout the whole country. You're not having a real sort of independent experience. And I've
Yeah.
seen that. I mean, that is literally, if you look in every cycle community, it's constant. Um, Same experience for every cyclist and motorcyclist and overlander as well. You have to ride in convoy or drive in convoy with the police. It's just I don't understand why you would do that. So that's why people choose not to go through Pakistan and go through Saudi
Mhm.
Arabia, or go through China instead. I'm glad I didn't,
I mean, yeah.
but it's a shame. It's a shame.
Mhm.
And of course, matters are worse now as well because of the issues, terrorism issues with India.
Mm.
We're recording this in May, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, you mentioned about the kind of the the kind of human nature, the kind of the kindness of that is you come across every day, despite what some media outlets would let you to believe. And you know, you also mentioned about some of the logistical struggles of having to
yep.
cross borders and what that entails. I mean, wha- is there a kind of a when you can you talk about more the notion of you mentioned earlier on about relating you can relate more or at the same level to someone in Thailand than perhaps in UK uh, if you remove the language barrier. Like what have you learned that kind of allowed you to make that connection? Is that just
So,
the empathy, the human empathy towards helping other humans, or just trying like our natural ability to connect and network with other humans? What I mean, just talk us through a bit more about that experience.
I mean, so just to be clear, what I said was, or what I meant to say was, I'd have more in common with someone like you who lives in London as opposed to someone who lives in Bangkok. But if you take away the language barrier, then there's a lot of things we could talk about, and have and find things in common. And the fact that you can do
Mm,
that anywhere, in Siberia, in Uzbekistan, wherever, just shows how sort of similar we are around the world, and how sort of like there's no sort of real need for war or anything like that. Just how sort of similar we are. It's just a very interesting thing. And also, when you sort of look at it from a sort of macro or even a micro scale,
mhm.
the social norms that exist in the UK are very similar to how they exist all around the world. We all want the best for ourselves. We're all utilitarian, rational minded. We all want the best for our families. We all, potentially want to have children or a family, or respect our
Mhm.
church, or whatever. And
Yeah,
these
yeah.
sorts of social norms are universal all around the world.
And the,
Um,
and the purpose
so
as well that
even
comes with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and although we're separated by borders or seas or war, everybody is very, very similar in reality. We all
Mhm.
have a hole in our arse, and we all go for a toilet break, after coffee. But um, I'm just freestyling that one there. But also, um,
Brilliant. Carry on, carry on.
Also, it's interesting as well, and this is more speaks to sort of like the financial norms that exist in the world. But I mean, the idea of sort of globalization, and it was very interesting to see how globalization shifts around the world as well. I mean, like
Mhm.
old Soviet countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, which are sort of anti-consumerism, anti-capitalist, communist places, and socialist places. It was interesting to see how much. I mean, they're not anymore. Obviously, they're free and democratic to an extent, but
Yeah.
and it's the same in Laos and Vietnam. But it's interesting how much globalization there is in these places. How many German vehicles, British cars, German cars, French trucks, or maybe no French trucks or whatever, Dutch trucks,
Mhm.
whatever trucks of
Yeah.
European or US. brand, but also how many buildings in places like Nukus in Uzbekistan, in the middle of nowhere, look like European standard. They look European. How the shopping malls look British. How a lot of the new buildings in Vietnam look French. It's weird how so much sort of Western globalization as an idea or as a construct has sort of separated and gone around the world. That's very interesting to see.
Mm.
And then sort of talking to that as well. I mean, the transactional aspect, the consumerism, which you see everywhere you go, whether that's in a cafe in Shoreditch or whether that's in the middle of nowhere where me and Malachi were in Jaslik in Uzbekistan, a very, very small, tiny village. But the idea of transactional financial norms still existed. Um, the idea that if you wanted something, you had to pay for it, as opposed to you just going there and you stealing it. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but it's just weird or interesting to think that transactional and financial norms, as well as social norms, are the same as they are in the UK, as in every other country in the world. Um,
Mhm.
so you realize, realistically, when you take away the language, you're not that different at all from anyone
Yeah,
else. Um, you might have different political beliefs or an education level that
yeah,
someone else
exactly.
doesn't have, but the potential is there. It's just the language that is different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is that obviously there are certain barriers that kind of, yeah, whether it is which kind of th- that are inherent into different countries, different continents. But yeah, when you start looking beyond that, you can't start to look at the human being and the kind of the connection that you can create with them. Obviously,
Yeah.
that might be difficult if they have a very different belief system than you have, um, and then kind of that led. So, but in essence, I think it's quite powerful to come to that realization of having the experience of talking and seeing and experiencing different cultures, people from different countries, and kind of noticing that we are all the same. We just speak different languages. We have different religions. We have different political parties. But at the same time, we all want to be the best version of ourselves. We want to kind of try to do the best for our own communities.
And travel is a really important thing to do that and to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important for everybody, and that's why I said before, like it felt like it was my social obligation to go and see the world.
Mm.
If not anything, to have a reference point of what these different countries are and how the other half lives,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and sort of understanding how fortunate I am. And then the other thing as well is like, I mean, when I'm in the UK, as do you probably as well, moan constantly about the UK and Brexit and the weather and everything. But actually, when you're outside the UK, you realise how fortunate you actually are.
Yeah, of course.
It's an
Yeah.
incredible
Mm.
country, and I think so many people in 2025 are just so bored that they have to constantly find a way to attack or bring down the country they live in. And I don't, it sounds weird, but like I feel like I've become more patriotic of the UK since leaving than ever living there. And
Mm.
just because you think the grass is always greener on the other side, well, actually, it isn't. The UK is a very, very good country with a fantastic quality of life. Do I want to live there? No, I'd like to live in Spain, but that's besides the point. It's still a very good country, and I think we need to treat the UK better and Europe better, and also the world better. I
Yeah,
think also
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't mention this before as well, Pedro, but I started getting into astronomy as well a lot,
Oh,
and looking at stars and thinking about how big the universe actually is. And that was also another motivation for wanting to see the world, because it seems like if I can't see the rest of our galaxy, I might as well see the rest of the world. So that was I should have mentioned that before. That was a motivation
that's
for
that's a
wanting
brilliant
to see the
compromise.
world as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, it's interesting because you have led a career in this kind of in the tech industry, in the startup industry, and you have a very kind of, I would say, a very unique perspective. because you can, traveling from the UK, you have the wealth that is in the UK that you can live. You mentioned about the benefits and the kind of the uniqueness of it, rather than when you compare it to other countries that kind of where the quality of life is lower or for some other reason are not at the same level, mainly because of kind of how the Western world was set up and they dominated and try to impose their rule over other countries. But that's for another podcast. But I kind of wanted to get at, if you, with this experience that you are gaining, what would be something that you would be willing to do once you, well, you mentioned that you wanted to stop for a few years before you go on your second trip around the world. Is there a kind of, are you in this trip brewing some kind of idea to start something, a new project, a new venture with the experiences that you gained up to now?
Yeah, definitely. I was just actually doing some work on it today. So I've got three ideas that, I mean, the problem with having ADHD is you make a lot of notes, like 10,000 notes a day, 10,000 word notes a day. And, my business ideation list, which is just the reminders app on my phone, is hundreds and hundreds of businesses of just things I think, oh, that'd be a good idea. And then sort of kind of it sounds really sad, but kind of something I've started doing recently is if I have a business idea, I'll spend maybe about a week on it and just sort of do a logo, make some processes, try and build an MVP and see if it's something. Because I am very interested in building a business, but it needs to be the right business and it needs to be something I'm passionate about. So I've just been doing sort of case studies on these sorts of businesses, spend a week trying to build an MVP, which sounds really sad. It does, but I mean, it might mean
I
something
wouldn't
in the
say it does.
future.
It's quite it reveals like your entrepreneurial spirit. I wouldn't say that
Exactly.
as sad. I mean,
Stop
if
flirting with me.
anything,
Yeah. And but actually, in terms of the cycling aspect, that's been really good because the cycling is almost like how would you call like an ethnographic research. So you get to be in the environment yourself to understand what the issues are. And the
yeah,
issues are in cycling touring, especially the fragmentation of information. So, like, what's the best bicycle shop in Dubrovnik? Well, if you ask Google, you'll get sponsored ads, and it'll be ranked. Or if you ask a WhatsApp group, you might get a different answer every time you ask it. So, something I'm putting together right now, and it's been an idea that I've sort of tossed and turned about for the past 12 months, but I'm going to put together and try and make a Wikipedia for cycle tourists. You call it Bicycle Touring Wiki, and it's going to be a one database which has got 50% people's primary research, and then 50% which is AI secondary research. So you might ask it a question of what's the best bicycle shop in Dubrovnik, and you'll get served the information from a primary research source, someone who's actually been there, and then also the second aspect would be AI fed. But that's something I'm sort of working on at the moment. I think that's would be really useful. May not have massive market scalability and revenue, but it's a good social enterprise. So that's something I'm working on right now. And then the second thing I'm working on at the moment, which I've just put a mock-up, an MVP together today, which looks really good, which is a way to basically meet other cyclists on the road. So kind of what the problem is at the moment is that you can't, unless you're in a WhatsApp group and you've got your eye or your ear to the ground on Strava and Komoot, and that means looking all day at the feed and trying to find where people are. It's very, very difficult / impossible to know if there are other cyclists around you. You kind of just have to see them on the road going in the same direction as you or coming at you. So I've got a solution which is going to make it a lot easier to find other cyclists. So
and is
that's
that
something
kind
I'm
of to
ideating and working
find
on.
cyclists around the globe or just in specific geographical areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, the great thing about it is that you can get a GPX API and you can connect it to Strava or to commute very easily. So you could find
Mm.
people in your local area, in London or in Bangkok, or you could find people all around the world. So ideally, if I was going to cycle to Bali over the next few weeks, I could look on it, see other people who are cycling in similar direction, and ride with them
Okay.
and make really good memories, which is kind of invaluable, really. Like I said before, so it's a good idea. I
Mhm.
think we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, is all of them have a good purpose and a good use, because there will be people that want to have access to that data. Not many, I assume, but the ones that need it will want it.
Yeah, well, I just hope that Komoot goes further and further down the drain, and the enshittification of their platform and more of their users require something that actually works. So we'll
Mhm.
see.
Right. So, well, keep your eyes, guys, keep and gals, on a few ideas here. We might see it in 1 or 2 years' time. So I wanted to kind of, you know, it's great that this conversation is going like ping pong everywhere, but that's the way these
That's
things
my
go.
ADHD, Pedro. Sorry about
That's all right. And I wanted to kind of bring it back to the world by bike, and for people listening, and you mentioned the kind of the country that you enjoy the most, the country that you didn't go, and that's the one of the regrets so far of the
that.
trip. Can you tell us like of your unique experiences, because you haven't yet shared like unique experiences from your journey so far, something that you know you couldn't have at in Wales, where you are originally from, or in UK, anything unexpected source of joy, or like it kind of that happened throughout your journey so far.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been told on previous podcasts to sort of bring this down a notch and not really talk about it and talk about the benefits of cycle touring as opposed to the negatives. And so I'm glad that
By the
you're
way,
asking.
you are here. There's no. It's a free zone here. you can say you can say however you express yourself. Express yourself.
So, I mean, I've had really good positive experiences all around the world on the cycle touring. On the cycle tour, I've been very fortunate of that. I know people who've had very negative experiences, both men and women. But shit happens, and it can happen anywhere. For me, like I said, I've been very relatively. I've done very well so far. I've been lucky, apart from the weather here in Bangkok right now. But I did also do India, and India is a very, very difficult place for cycling.
Mhm.
And so it's just to sort of like set my stall out. Me and Malachi, we flew into New Delhi, and we met up with two other cycle tourists, Sam and Elliot, and then we decided to ride the Taj Mahal together. So ride from New Delhi to Agra, Taj Mahal, and then ride to Jaipur. And we also met another guy called Josh. Josh has never ridden a bicycle before, but we just sort of convinced him, peer pressured, bullied, whatever, to basically buy a bike from Decathlon for £200 and put his backpack on the back and basically cycle with us. We're all professional cyclists, semi-professional, amateur, whatever. And
Yeah.
he's on his Decathlon mountain bike, and he's riding around. He does very well. But we're all, we're having a good time riding together. We're not wearing helmets because obviously we're young and free and stupid, and just doing ridiculous things on the motorways, like holding onto the back of tuk-tuks, being pulled along. And then one day I wasn't wearing my helmet and also was being pulled along by a tuk-tuk. And I was like, it got up to about 45 kilometers an hour on the back of the tuk-tuk, and I had a little bit of a wobble, and I tried to correct it, and I basically just pulled myself onto the ground at 45 kilometers an hour, hit my head, obviously no helmet, bleeding outside of my head. Very nearly died on the motorway that day. Went to hospital in an ambulance. worst ambulance experience I've ever had in my life. Horrific. Worst hospital experience I've ever had in my life. Like a community centre with dust everywhere and just the most. I mean, I can't, public health in India is not great, so you can imagine my
Mm.
surprise and shock getting to the hospital after this terrible experience I've just had, seeing what I mean. It's almost like the hospital was worse than what had actually happened to me, even though I nearly died. Um, and yeah, I was like, that was a really hard day. And sort of
I'm
since then, I've
sure.
always worn my
Wow.
helmet, kind
Good
of,
choice.
almost 99%, because I realized the value of my life and how it made me realize that when I was younger and I tried to take my life when I was younger, I did that because it was a rational decision at the time, although it wasn't realistically rational. It was a conscious decision. Having your life nearly taken on the road, not by your own fault, kind of put into perspective as to how much I value my life now versus how much I valued my life back then. So
Mm.
it was a completely different uh, understanding of life and death between that time and this time, and also to think about everything I've achieved between the time when I was younger, I tried to take my life, and the time now, nearly losing my life because I was being
Yeah.
stupid on the back of a tuk-tuk. So it was a really wide awakening call for me, and I've sort of worn my helmet every day since then. So that was the lowest point, but also the hardest point. And then generally, just in India, was very hard as well. I mean, we're talking like the worst roads you could possibly imagine, like speed bumps everywhere, the horns,
Mm.
like several times a second, horn just beep, 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 beep. It's just,
Right.
it's insane. You've got people like following you for 5 kilometers on the back of a scooter to try and take a photo with you. They'll come in front of you, they'll stop in the middle of the road, they'll get off, they'll try and take you to get a photo. If you ever stop to do a photo with them, they'll try to kiss you. Like they'll do like a selfie, and then just as they're taking the photo, they'll kiss you. It's really, really fucking weird. So you got
What?
all that going on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's whether you're a guy or a girl. You've got the pollution. It's the most
Mm.
polluted. New Delhi is the most polluted place in the world, after Ulaanbaatar in winter. So it's a very high. Um, it's 500 on the scale of air quality, which is very, very bad. So
Mm.
you're constantly coughing, and then you also never see the sun either because of just the smog everywhere. So
There's
it's
just
it's an
smog everywhere.
incredibly
Mm.
difficult place to be. It's not for the faint-hearted. You've got to be a veteran traveler to go there, and you just get no privacy either. So I'm really sort of like giving you all the negatives here. But here's the thing about India: it was the most difficult place I've been in my life. I'd probably never go again on a bicycle. Well, never. I'm not 100% sure. But the people were very, very nice. They're very inquisitive, very
Mm.
curious, which can get very annoying after a while. But they're very, very nice people. So I don't knock the people at all. But as a country, it's a very, very difficult place to cycle to. And I wouldn't do
Mm.
it again. I probably wouldn't advise anybody else to do it either, to be completely honest, unless you were going to do a very short route from New Delhi up straight to the border of Nepal, because Nepal's completely different, like insanely different, almost European. Um,
Okay.
but it was a very, very difficult place for me in India, and also as well. And I don't think I've talked about this on a previous podcast. And I know I'm making this all about mental health, but I think it's important. And I will say that when I was younger and I did feel really bad and depressed, and it was partly my environment and how I felt about myself and everything else, I've never felt that low in my life ever until I was in India. And this is this
Mm.
to me, when I think about it, it puts into perspective how difficult it was being there, because every single day I would wake up really early, try to do as many miles per day to try and get out of India as quickly as possible because I hated being there so much. And my depression of being there and cycling there was so immense that I knew that if I really needed to, I could get out of the country. I could pay someone to take me to the airport, leave my bike there or whatever, because I was feeling insanely low. I wouldn't have done anything stupid, like kill myself or anything, but I knew that in 10 days I'll be out. I'll be in Nepal. Um,
Right.
and it was just hard. But I've never felt how I felt when I was younger, like I did since when I was in India. If that makes sense. But it's just the
Yeah.
things like seeing people in poverty constantly. Like it's a very weird vibe. I did the Uttar Pradesh region, which is the northern region of India. I didn't realize at the time, but it is the poorest region of India. Less than 50% of all Indians in the country live on less than, I think it's $5 per day, which means that they're in poverty, based on
Mm.
the world scale, which is
Yeah.
insane when you consider that India's got a nuclear program and also a space program. Just crazy.
Yeah.
Rivers full of sewage, children drinking water out of like dirty water out of wells, some horrific stuff like dead people on the sides of roads, dead dogs everywhere. Like the smell of the dead dogs on the side of the road is just insane. So many crashes everywhere. So this is really not going in the travel guide for India, is it? Sorry about
I
this,
don't
Pedro.
think it is.
I'm just being honest.
I don't think it is, but I mean, it's unfiltered, it's raw. So I
It's
mean, that's
unfiltered. It's raw. It's an extremely difficult place, and
Mhm.
when people say to me, "Oh, I love India, I love the Indian culture," I'm like, well, you've got to be realistic about what that actually means. It's not just all the positive and benefits bits. You need to open your eyes, because people who go to India and have a tourist and backpacker experience, which is going to Mumbai and then going on the train to New Delhi or to Jaipur, that's a completely different experience to going through on a bicycle, going to all the
Mhm.
poor places, and seeing how people actually live in India, which is disgusting, like horrific. Um, it's just not a nice place, and I couldn't do it again just because simply I couldn't
The way it is.
experience it again. It's horrible.
Mhm.
It's genuinely the worst place I've ever been in my life. It's almost akin to a war zone when you go to some of the poorer
Wow,
places, like in the northern region. It's insane.
that's quite a stark comparison to compare it to a war zone. I mean,
Well,
surely
and here's
can't
the
be
thing as
that
well,
bad.
like yeah, that's what you'd hope that. And listen, everybody I've spoken to, they've all said like, but here's the thing as well. Like I always say to people, never trust anybody when it comes to travel. Go and find out for yourself. So don't trust me. Go and do it yourself. Go to India yourself. Have this experience. Don't listen to me, because I think that's important to do. But from my experience, I'm speaking as to how I saw
Yeah,
it. It was war zone like.
very good. I mean, not very good. I mean, thanks
I
for
know what you
sharing that
mean.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for sharing that experience. I mean, kind of, I just for balancing this, and then to return to a slightly more positive note.
to balance it,
I
the food is good and the people are nice.
yeah, I mean, well, I was going to ask in terms of kind of, has there been any kind of overall from the experience so far, any moments where whether you connected with someone, whether you had an amazing day on the bike, whether you had the kind of these kind of a brain like light bulb moments. I don't know. It's this kind of question might be is maybe too easy, too blasé to ask, but you go through so many experiences every day that you kind of there is time to think, there is time to reflect on your life, there's time to reflect on what you want to achieve in the future, there's time to reflect on your regrets and so forth. So there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of time with your
There
thoughts.
is. Yeah.
What is there been any, now on a positive note, any moments that kind of have been stand out as amazing or revelatory?
Yes. I mean, spending time with other people is really, really good. Being able to cycle with other people, or even to have a nice conversation in English, which is kind of like a breath of fresh air after being out in the wilderness for weeks and weeks at a time, is very nice. Having a Western comfort, something you're familiar with after again weeks of not having it, is very nice. You realize how fortunate, like I said before, how fortunate we are coming from
Yeah.
the West, uh, to have what we have, to know what we know, and then to know also what these people don't have. And for me,
Mhm.
I'm sorry to bring it back to India, but I knew that in 10 days I could leave I also knew that in 10 days, although I could leave, these people couldn't. And these people don't have any reference point for what life outside the poorest region of India is like. So it was very difficult for me to sort of wrap my head around that. They don't have passports or anything like that, so they can never leave. And it's what they have grown up with and will only ever know in their lives. So to come to your question, like it has made
Yeah.
me sort of value who I am in terms of nationality, and sort of value the UK a lot more and Western society, and how lucky we are in reality.
Hmm.
We to live in a free country, almost free, depending what you read in the news, but about free speech. But it's a lot more free than Vietnam.
Mm.
To live in a democracy, all these things which we take for granted, and people moan about constantly in the UK,
Yeah. Yeah.
about
Yeah.
bus times or whatever, or the prices of train tickets, or Labour doing whatever. Like all of it is their first world problems. Being a vegan, for example. I'm sorry, I'm going to upset a lot of vegans on your podcast, but being a vegan is a first world problem.
Yeah.
Realistically,
Yeah.
you cannot be a vegan in Uzbekistan or Laos. You'll die. But even in Laos, if they kill an animal, they will eat every part of the animal. Feet,
Mm.
beaks.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It's horrible. It's disgusting. But they do it, and they have a different connection with nature because they do that, rather than not eating meat at all.
Yeah.
But all these things that we take for granted in Western society, I think is kind of disgusting, and it's the opposite to that as well is like fast fashion and over consumerism. And actually, one of the things that I really enjoyed about Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, in hindsight, was how simple life was there. In the small towns and villages like Jaslik and Nukus, it's a very simple life. There's no Amazon Prime, there's no McDonald's, um, there's no all the sort of like things that exist in the UK or in a big city like London. None of that exists. It's just a very, very simple life, a
Yeah.
farmer's life. You know, you
Yeah.
don't have to dress up to do something in a particular way, or like it's all cash. There's no Bitcoin or anything like that. It's a very simple life. It's a very beautiful life, and I think it's good for the mind and the soul.
Yeah. I would caveat that by, I mean, okay, so I don't have the experience of traveling through those countries, and also contextualize that the fact that, you know, that the information that you are telling me, it's is your through your own eyes.
Yep.
I would just say to that, kind of in from my perspective, is that what it seems like what you gained is a lot of perspective from, in terms of the kind of the privilege, I guess, that you have, growing up in UK. But I would I wouldn't put it as a simple life. They might not see You might see it as a simple life, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a simple life, because they might see it as a very hard life. But in the context here is I think is key, because it kind of we can start romanticizing about, you know being a farmer, and what that means, and rather than working
So I mean, it's a
working
hard life to us, but they don't have a reference point like we do. So
mhm.
to them, it's just our life, as opposed to
Exactly, yeah,
yeah.
that's
So I
true,
get you.
that
I
is
get your
true.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. But I mean,
But
it's
thanks for putting context on it, because I don't want to end up on one of these YouTube reel clips where I've been taken out of context.
I mean, I think this is one of the beauties, and I mean, in a that I can relate to, in a very kind of small way, my experience of traveling from the north, traversing the whole of Portugal,
Mhm.
and so that kind of gives me a little bit of perspective in what you're going through, in the sense of getting to meet different people, traveling through different landscapes and experiencing
Well, like you might
different
experience it as well. Like
uniquenesses.
in Portugal, like for me, Portugal and Croatia as well, and those sorts of regions, I see them as like also quite a simple life. Obviously, we're talking about the semantics again, but they're a lot more sort of laid back. Um, they take themselves, not as seriously, I think, as what people like in the UK do. There's certainly a lot more things to worry about in the UK and the US, and things are a lot more expensive as well. I think they're just simpler lives, and potentially in Portugal, maybe. Um,
Hmm.
so that's why I'm attracted to Spain, really,
Yeah.
and attracted to living in Portugal and Croatia as well, because it's just a simpler and nicer life. Everybody seems happier because you don't have to worry about all those first world issues. But
I
that's my
mean, yeah,
opinion. You might say it differently.
yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. Let's leave it at that. I wanted to, I wanted now to kind of, I think you talked at length about kind of the beautiful experiences and not so beautiful experiences of traveling, of bikepacking, and that's kind of the encapsulating that is one of the things that I've been trying to do through kind of the questions that I've been asking. And it kind of leads me to the kind of one of the questions that kind of is one of the main reasons why I started this podcast, which is, what does success look like to you? And I imagine that if I asked you this question like 2 years ago, your answer might have been very different from your answer now. But I'm interested in what is for you, what it does look like to you now after, the experience that you are having.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is a dynamic. I think it changes with time. And I'm sure my
Mhm.
definition of it now will change again in the future as well. But right now, and sort of encompassing what I've done in the past sort of 5 years, I would say that maybe success to me right now equals maybe following through, which is not touching cloth, but more like in terms of you start something, therefore you see it through to the end.
Yeah,
That for me is the idea of success. And whether that outcome is a success or a failure in itself doesn't really matter as long as you've started it and you've gone through. It's kind of like exploratory research. I mentioned it earlier.
mhm.
Even if you go into something with the intention of failing, you've still started. You've still learnt more information and research that you wouldn't have had
Yeah,
before. So I think that is it. Following through for me, and I also said before as well, like in terms of that, having that agreement with myself that I'm going to do something, and then doing it, that would be success. I
mhm.
kind of I've been thinking about this question because I know you've asked this question before on with your other guests, and I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and it's kind of difficult for me giving that answer because, like I said before, I've decided to miss the rest of Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia and just fly straight to Brisbane. So in a way, um, it doesn't contradict my answer to this question, but I do feel a bit disappointed that I'm not going to do those bits. But at the same time, I'm putting something ahead of success, which I think is potentially more important to me at the moment, which is the happiness element. Success is
Mm.
very important, but I think happiness potentially is more interesting or more important for me right now. And therefore, I've decided to enjoy the cycling as opposed to
Yeah.
the general idea of what success is, which is to do the whole road distance of 35,000 kilometers.
I mean, but that then, I mean, it's. I would argue that success is, as you pointed out rightly, is ever evolving. You know, there's not a
It's
definition of
continual
success.
improvement as well. Yeah,
Exactly. So happiness with following through, it's is intertwined. It's. I would say that I would argue that,
definitely.
and and then I think there is, it's there is the importance of enjoying the journey.
Hmm.
You don't. I mean, this has been said many times before, but it's not about reaching the destination. It's about enjoying the journey. That's where the kind of the beauty of kind of understanding why you are doing something like this is enjoying the
Exactly.
journey.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and if it's successful,
hmm,
I mean, if it's a happy journey and you've enjoyed it, therefore it's a success. If you've
exactly.
done 380 kilometers every single day, um, I'm not picking on anyone, but I'm just saying, like, if I'd have done 380 kilometers every single day and not enjoyed it, then that would be a waste of time, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Unless I could just say in the pub that
it's
I've
from
done
a
it.
it, it's how you frame it is really how you frame it.
Yeah,
There's no other ways because it's your personal view on doing 380 kilometers a day and not enjoying it,
Incredible.
it's not
Yeah.
success, but someone else will be successful. It's
Yeah.
how you frame it. With these questions is really about the personal perspective and what you bring from your own personality, from your own understanding of the world and that's what I want to shine a light on, is you as an individual.
Yeah.
So this brings me nicely on to a question that is asked of all of my guests, not set by me. It's a question that is left to each and every one of my guests by my previous guests that came on the podcast. And this question was left for you, and is the following: what is your favorite character from your favorite book?
Yeah. Okay. So my favorite character from a book is probably it's more of a novel, I guess you could say, a case study book, but it's called Predictably Irrational, and it's
Mm-hmm.
by an American Israeli author called Dan Ariely. It's a fantastic book about how modern economy works,
Yeah.
looking at how people are
Interesting.
predictably irrational, which I think is very interesting. It looks at the way in which people buy things and how when you give them certain information, you can predict what they're gonna pick. It's almost like the illusion of free choice. And the
Yeah.
book follows himself, Dan Ariely, and he undertakes lots of different experiments with MIT and The Economist magazine, and he's the character within the book. It's a very, very good book. I highly implore everybody to read it, at least just
Very
to
good.
understand how companies and governments are using things like nudge theory and
Mm.
behavioral economic procedures like bias, choice architecture, color psychology to basically control how we do things and spend our money. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a book worth reading. Just get that understanding of how the all the mechanisms of
Yeah, and you can apply that to your own
making
business
you
as well.
you choose something, especially I guess very important for someone working in the tech industry, working in something that involves some kind of app, because that uh, it allows you to create the right mechanisms to get people to make a click here or
Absolutely.
make a right
Yeah.
choice. Yeah, brilliant. So I mean, I guess now is the time for you to leave a question to my next guest. What question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Are you going to put me on the spot here again?
Yeah, yeah.
Damn it. Okay, I'm going to my reminders on my MacBook here. I've got questions ready for this exact moment. There's about 700 here. So I think I would probably use the question, what's something you once believed to be true that you've since completely changed your mind about, and what caused the shift? I think that's a really
Wow.
good question. It's personal, philosophical, has professional contexts. So hopefully your next guest will enjoy answering that question.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. It's quite a deep one. I think
It is a deep one, yeah.
yeah, it will get a lot. People will get a lot of people on their back foot with this one, I think. But it's a great one because is these type of questions that make you think, make you right. Oh, hold on. I need time to think about this. And even reflect and kind of maybe even get a few nuggets of information that I wouldn't otherwise get from my questions or the conversation itself. So thanks for sharing that.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Ben, I think people will take a lot from this conversation. We touch upon politics, we touch upon society, touch about economics. It's quite a wide ranging conversation, and all just because you decided to take a trip around the globe, and the experiences that you have lived through and the reflections that you had along the way. This is kind of, I think this, when you open your mind to these kind of challenges, then you are opening a whole world of opportunities to new experiences, to new knowledge, to new understandings. And I think that's a great way to explore the world. And when you do it by bike, you also are opening new doors. You are also living through a very particular experience that you wouldn't otherwise if you were traveling by car or by train, perhaps. So I think it's quite revealing of what it actually entails when you get and commit to ride across the globe. But also is important to share the experiences that are not so great, because it helps to level out and balance what it actually means to take on a challenge like this. So thanks for taking the time and sharing with us your journey so far.
Very good comments as well. I completely agree, and thank you for having me on.
I hope Ben's story gave you something to think about, whether you're just committing to your own version of the ride, of the journey, or just remembering that sometimes success means showing up, even when it's hard. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs a spark of courage. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to the show wherever you listen to it, because we have more stories like this coming your way. Until next time, keep pedaling, keep pushing, and ride to your own success.